They thought you would break first. They always do. That is the part nobody tells you about the narcissist's final decision. The ultimatum, the threat, the carefully calculated move designed to bring you back in line. They delivered it with absolute certainty, with the calm confidence of someone who has done this before and watched it work every single time. They expected the familiar sequence: your anxiety rising, your resolve crumbling, your desperate scramble back toward them with apologies they never deserved and reassurances they never earned. But this time, you did not break. This time, you let them live with it. And nothing in the entire architecture of the narcissistic personality has prepared them for this moment. The narcissist's entire psychological infrastructure is built on a single foundational assumption: that they are the one with the power to end things. That they are the one who decides when something is over, when someone is dismissed, when a relationship has served its purpose and can be discarded. The idea that someone they targeted, someone they chose precisely because they seemed manageable, forgiving, easily influenced, would one day simply step back and say, through their silence, their distance, their absolute refusal to chase, "Fine, then we are done." That is not supposed to happen. That is not part of the script. And the narcissist, suddenly in a situation their script did not account for, begins to unravel in ways that would almost be fascinating if you had not paid such a high price to witness them. This video is about that unraveling, what it looks like, why it happens, what Machiavelli's dark psychology reveals about the power dynamics at play, and most importantly, what it means for you, the person who finally held the line, that they cannot believe you made them live with their decision. To understand why the narcissist cannot process your non-response, you first need to understand the psychological mechanics of how they operate, because the strategy they were running on you was not random. It was a system, and, like any system, it has specific vulnerabilities that only become visible when someone refuses to play their assigned role within it. The narcissist's relational strategy is built on what psychologists call the cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. It is a predictable, repeating pattern that the narcissist runs, usually unconsciously, sometimes with deliberate calculation, across every significant relationship in their life. In the idealization phase, you are perfect. You are everything. You receive an intensity of attention, affection, an apparent understanding that feels unlike anything you have experienced before. This is not love, it is the construction of a mirror. The narcissist is not seeing you. They are seeing a reflection of themselves that they find gratifying. When the mirror stops reflecting what they need, when you develop opinions they disagree with, boundaries they find inconvenient, or an autonomous inner life that resists their control, the devaluation begins. Subtle at first, a criticism disguised as concern, a dismissal dressed as a joke, a comparison designed to diminish the message beneath all of it is the same. You are not as good as I initially suggested, and your value to me is contingent on your compliance. And then comes the discard, or the threat of it. The ultimatum, the final decision that was calculated to produce fear, compliance, and a desperate reaffirmation of your investment in the relationship. It is a power move, designed not necessarily to end things, but to reset the power dynamic, to remind you of your position, to pull you back from any autonomy you might have been developing and re-establish the fundamental terms of the arrangement. Their needs are primary, yours are secondary, and any challenge to that order will be met with the threat of abandonment. Here is what Machiavelli understood about this kind of power move that the narcissist does not. A threat that is not acted upon destroys the power of the one who made it. The prince who threatens and does not follow through has not just failed to intimidate, he has revealed the limit of his actual power. He has shown that the threat itself was the weapon, not any genuine capability or willingness to execute. And the subject who calls that bluff, who stands still while the threat lands and simply does not respond with the expected capitulation, has just demonstrated something the prince cannot recover from easily. You called the bluff. You let the decision stand, and in doing so, you revealed that the weapon they have been wielding over you was never as powerful as they needed you to believe. Now, the narcissist is in a situation their psychology was never designed to navigate, and the response is predictable in its broad structure, even if it feels chaotic and bewildering to experience up close. The first phase is disbelief. The narcissist genuinely cannot process what has happened. Their cognitive framework, built entirely around the assumption of their own centrality, their own irreplaceability, their own ability to determine the terms of every relationship they enter, does not have a category for the person who simply lets them go. They check their phone. They replay the last conversation. They look for the sign that you are about to crack the message that says you have reconsidered. The social media activity that reveals your suffering. The mutual friend who reports that you are struggling. When none of that comes, when the silence is not a temporary protest but a permanent state, the disbelief tips into something more volatile. The second phase is narcissistic injury. This is the term psychologists use to describe the destabilization that occurs in the narcissistic personality. When their grandiose self-image is directly contradicted by external reality, the narcissist's self-image requires a constant supply of evidence that they are special, superior, and indispensable. Your departure, especially a quiet, dignified, undramatic departure that does not beg for their return, is direct, unambiguous evidence to the contrary. It says, "You were replaceable. You were not indispensable. The relationship I had with you was not the extraordinary thing you believed it to be. This injury is not mine." It strikes at the foundation of the narcissistic personality structure, the grandiosity that serves as the primary defense against the deep, buried shame that most narcissists carry but can never consciously acknowledge. And the response to narcissistic injury, almost universally, is one of two things: rage or collapse. Sometimes both in sequence. Machiavelli wrote that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who attacks you openly. It is the one who has been wounded by you without your intending to wound them, because that enemy's response is driven not by strategy but by injury, and injured people are capable of disproportionate, irrational, and unpredictable retaliation. The narcissist who is experiencing genuine injury from your non-response is not operating from logic. They are operating from the raw, destabilized place of someone whose fundamental sense of themselves has been challenged. Understanding this does not require you to accommodate it. It simply requires you to see it clearly for what it is, so that when the retaliation comes, in whatever form it takes, you recognize it as the symptom of their wound rather than evidence of your wrongdoing. The retaliation deserves its own examination because it comes in forms that are specifically engineered to exploit the vulnerabilities of people who have spent time in close relationship with a narcissist. People who care, people who feel guilty, people who spent months or years being conditioned to believe that the narcissist's pain was their responsibility. The most common first form is the Hoover, named after the vacuum brand, because its purpose is to suck you back in. The sudden reappearance, the unexpected message, the dramatic declaration of change, of insight, of profound realization about what they lost and who they are without you. The Hoover is calibrated with remarkable precision to address exactly the things you said were wrong, to demonstrate exactly the awareness you told them was missing. Not because that awareness is real, because the narcissist is a student of your psychology and they know which buttons to press. The Hoover comes in different intensities. At the low end, it is a casual reaching out, a comment on a post, a text that seems innocuous, a reason to make contact that appears to have nothing to do with the relationship. At the high end, it is a full emotional performance, tears, declarations, promises, the complete theatrical production of a person who has finally understood the depth of what they lost. The dark psychology truth that Machiavelli would identify immediately. This is not change. This is strategy. The narcissist is not performing this because they have genuinely transformed. They are performing it because your non-response has threatened something they need. Their self-image, their sense of control, their access to the emotional supply your presence provided. The performance is in service of those needs, not yours. The second form is triangulation. The introduction of a third party designed to produce jealousy, insecurity, or a competitive response that re-engages your investment in the narcissist. A new relationship displayed conspicuously. A mutual connection suddenly receiving the attention that used to be directed at you. A public performance of moving on that is calculated in its every detail to reach you, to penetrate the silence, and produce a reaction that confirms you are not as indifferent as you appear. The third form, and often the most difficult to navigate, is reputation management through smear. When the Hoover fails and the triangulation produces no response, the narcissist's injury can tip into something uglier. The rewriting of the narrative, the version of events that positions them as the victim and you as the problem. The carefully managed campaign to ensure that the social environment around you reflects their reality rather than yours. Each of these forms is a test, and the response that preserves your power. The response that Machiavelli as strategic. Psychology and your own psychological integrity both point toward is the same in every case. Continued, dignified, unshakable silence. Here is what no one prepares you for, and what may be the most psychologically demanding part of the entire experience. The moment when you genuinely feel sorry for them. It will come not for everyone, and not always, but for people with real empathy, humanity, real capacity for seeing the full complexity of another person. It comes. A moment when the narcissist's desperation becomes visible in a way that strips away the armor of their cruelty and reveals, however briefly, the frightened, deeply damaged person underneath. The person who was almost certainly hurt by someone long before they ever hurt you. The person whose narcissism is not a choice but a psychological adaptation to wounds they never properly healed. This is the moment of maximum vulnerability. Not because compassion is wrong. Compassion is not wrong. But because the narcissist, consciously or unconsciously, is extraordinarily skilled at deploying this exact perception to their advantage. They know from long experience of people with exactly your psychological profile that your empathy is the crack in your armor, that if they can get you to see their pain, to feel responsible for it, to believe that your compassion could somehow heal what decades of unprocessed damage has produced, they can Machiavelli was clear on this point in a way that feels harsh, but is ultimately protective. You cannot fix what you did not break. The narcissist's wounds predate you. Their psychologist was formed in conditions that had nothing to do with you. Your compassion, however genuine, however generously extended, cannot do what years of professional therapeutic work may not be able to do. And the attempt to provide it from within a relationship that has already demonstrated its cost to you is not compassion. It is self-sacrifice dressed in the language of care. You can hold compassion for the narcissist's underlying pain without re-engaging with the behavior that pain produces. You can recognize their humanity without offering your well-being as the price of their healing. You can wish them genuine peace from a distance that protects the peace you have finally, with great personal cost, begun to build for yourself. The narcissist cannot believe you made them live with their final decision. Part of what they cannot believe is that someone who clearly has a heart, who clearly felt deeply, who clearly was not indifferent, chose themselves anyway, chose to be kind to themselves in the way they were never quite kind enough to be kind to you. That choice is not cruelty. It is the hard, necessary, profoundly healthy act of someone who has finally understood that their empathy belongs to people who have earned it, not to people who have spent months or years exploiting it. Let us talk about what is actually happening inside you during this period, because it is not what the narcissist imagines. And it is not what most people on the outside assume either. They imagine you are suffering. The narcissist, in particular, needs to believe you are suffering, because your suffering is the evidence that their departure mattered, that you valued what you had, that you recognize in its absence how irreplaceable they were. Your suffering is, in the narcissist's internal economy, a form of tribute, and its absence, the possibility that you are not devastated, that you are perhaps even relieved, is genuinely incomprehensible to them. The truth is more complex than either suffering or relief. What most people feel in the immediate aftermath of genuinely holding their position against a narcissist is a disorienting mixture of both, along with guilt, second-guessing, the physical sensation of anxiety that has been a constant companion for so long, it has begun to feel like a baseline. And underneath all of it, something quieter and more solid. The first tentative experience of what it feels like to be on your own side. For people who have been in extended contact with a narcissist, that last sensation is unfamiliar enough to be almost alarming. The relationship trained you systematically through the cycle of idealization and devaluation to make your own needs secondary, to check yourself against their responses before trusting your own perceptions, to seek their approval as the primary metric of whether your choices were valid. The removal of that external reference point, even when that reference point was consistently distorted and damaging, leaves a kind of vertigo that is often mistaken for grief. It is not grief for them, it is disorientation, the understandable confusion of a nervous system that has been organized around someone else's emotional weather for a long time, suddenly finding itself in the unfamiliar quiet of its own actual climate. Jung would describe this as the beginning of the individuation process, the return to authentic selfhood after an extended period of self-abandonment. It is not comfortable. Growth rarely is. But beneath the discomfort is something extraordinarily valuable. The gradual, day by day, decision by decision, rebuilding of a relationship with yourself that the narcissistic dynamic had spent considerable time and energy dismantling. The narcissist cannot believe you made them live with their final decision. What they do not understand, what they may never understand, because their psychological structure does not permit it, is that in making them live with it, you gave yourself something back, something you had been handing over, piece by piece, for longer than you realized. And getting it back, even in the messy, disorienting, non-linear way that recovery always works, is worth every uncomfortable, uncertain, quietly triumphant day of the silence. There is a question that surfaces in everyone who has been through this experience and it deserves to be addressed directly. Without the comfortable reassurances that most content on this topic wraps around it, will they actually change? The honest answer, grounded in psychological research, clinical evidence, and the pattern that the dark psychology of Machiavelli's observations on human nature consistently confirms, is this: rarely, and not because people cannot change. People can change. Genuine transformation is possible for anyone with sufficient motivation, sufficient insight, and sufficient sustained engagement with the difficult internal work that change requires. But the narcissist's psychological structure creates a specific and formidable barrier to that process. Change requires the ability to acknowledge fault genuinely, internally, without immediately converting that acknowledgement into evidence of victory. Change requires the capacity to sit with shame without immediately deflecting it outward onto someone else. Change requires a period of genuine vulnerability, of not knowing, of being uncertain, of being unable to manage the perceptions of others that the narcissistic defense system exists specifically to prevent. The narcissist who appears to change in the immediate aftermath of losing someone who refused to return is almost always demonstrating something other than genuine transformation. They are demonstrating the narcissistic adaptation to loss, the rapid recalibration of behavior designed to recover what was lost and reestablish the supply of validation, attention, and control that the relationship was providing. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who changes his methods only when forced to by external pressure has not changed his nature. He has changed his tactics, and tactics change back the moment the external pressure is removed. The person who only shows insight when the alternative is permanent loss has not achieved insight. They have achieved the performance of insight, and the performance is maintained only as long as the loss remains an immediate, tangible threat. This does not mean you must carry bitterness or refuse the possibility of their genuine growth. It means you evaluate change, not by its declaration, but by its demonstration over time. Under low pressure, in the small moments where no one is watching and nothing strategic is at stake. That is where genuine change lives. And the evidence of it, if it is hell, does not require your presence to accumulate. You do not owe anyone your proximity while they grow. You especially do not owe it to someone whose growth was only catalyzed by the threat of losing access to you. You held the line. You let the silence stand. You made them live with their final decision. And in doing so, you did something that will reverberate through the rest of your life in ways that are still unfolding. You proved something to yourself that no one can take back, that you can withstand the discomfort of being the one who does not chase, that you can survive the anxiety of disappointing someone who conditioned you to believe their disappointment was your emergency, that you can stand in the vertigo of an unfamiliar freedom and not run back to the familiar cage simply because the cage had the courtesy to be warm. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle, the victory that is achieved through positioning, through patience, through the strategic understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to move. The narcissist came to the battlefield expecting a fight, expecting tears or rage or desperate negotiation, expecting you to make their exit difficult enough that their return would feel like a gift they were granting rather than a need they were revealing. You gave them none of that. You gave them silence. Clean, complete, unbreakable silence. And in that silence, more loudly than any confrontation could have communicated, you told them everything they needed to know about where the power in that dynamic actually lived. It lived in you. It always lived in you. They borrowed it through your compliance, your forgiveness, your extraordinary capacity for care, and you took it back the only way it can ever truly be taken back. Not through argument, not through revenge, but through the quiet, final, irreversible act of choosing yourself. To every person watching this who is in the middle of holding that line right now, who is sitting in the silence and feeling every second of its weight, this is what we want you to know. It does not get easier immediately. The disorientation is real. The longing is real. The grief, even for something that hurt you, even for a version of someone that never quite existed outside the idealization phase, is real. But so is what is on the other side of it. The version of you that is rebuilt not around someone else's needs, someone else's moods, someone else's carefully managed version of who you are supposed to be, but around your own. Quiet, solid, genuinely, structurally free. The narcissists cannot believe you made them live with their final decision. That disbelief is the sound of your power being recognized. Finally, at the exact moment it cost them something real. This is Mind of the Alpha, where we go to the psychological places that actually matter. If this video named something you have been living, subscribe right now, because the next part of this series goes even deeper into the psychology of recovery, power, and what it means to rebuild yourself after a narcissistic dynamic. You will not want to miss it. Share this with someone who needs to know they are not alone, and drop a comment below. Tell us where you are in this journey. The decision was theirs. The freedom is yours.